Now, before we get our next keynote speaker onto the stage, before lunch we heard from some very powerful voices around effective youth engagement, these beautiful people here who have agreed to come back on stage. It was an honest reflection about what works, what doesn't when it comes to engaging with young people and those of us obviously in the room from the sector. Now, the conference theme is about connecting generations and the power of that intergenerational connection. So in the spirit of the connection, we've got them back just for a very quick 10-minute session. And there's a couple of questions that, Eddie, I'll get you to facilitate. One is around the under-16 ban, how on social media, this has happened over obviously in Australia, and our government is currently thinking about bringing that legislation into law and what these bright people on the stage think about that, but also around the engagement piece. And the question for me is around what does connection across generations look like when we're doing it well, when there's an open channel between younger and the older, more experienced generation, as I like to call it. So I'll let you facilitate that. Eddie?
Awesome. Kia ora. Nice to be back up here. I think I'm going to start with the second question, and then we can leave with the kind of topical what's happening with social media and the proposed bans and the campaigning that's happening around that. Because I think that second question is the really, really important one for this room, for all of us to be thinking about. And as the elder on the stage right now, how did that happen? I'm going to share a little bit about my experience of why this work has been really important and how I might have had to change some of my ways of thinking and being to be able to do it really well. But equally, I want to throw the mic to a couple of you to talk about what it looks like when you're listening and when you're learning from elders like me as well. So the first thing I want to say is that all of these young people have been engaged with Curative for a variety of different reasons and a variety of different projects. For every time that we sit down and think about how we're going to design or how we're going to work with or how we're going to include young people in any process, we always think about what is the kaupapa that we're working on, why do we want to engage young people, what difference are we wanting them to make to the mahi that we are doing, and how is youth voice actually going to strengthen it. And it's by doing that work first that you can start to put some of your own stuff to one side. You know, we're conditioned, all of us, in our work lives to know the answers. We're conditioned to be able to solve the problems. We're conditioned to be able to get the report done in the timeframes that we need to be able to do it. And we're rewarded for that expertise. We're rewarded for that intelligence. We're rewarded for getting that work done on time. So actually, when we're working with young people, we have to open ourselves to curiosity in a way that we don't always have to, and we have to really, really be considered in the way that we design that. But that doesn't mean that we put our own expertise, our own intelligence, our own networks, our own lived experience, our own seeing what works and what doesn't to one side. It's actually about how you bring those two worlds together, because that's where we find our strength. Every time I work with and talk to these young people, they provide so much inspiration, they provide so many insights, they provide a richness of thought and conversation that I wouldn't be able to access myself if I walked into any one of their communities and asked the same set of questions. And it's that intelligence that we then use to make the decisions and create the answers and to find the responses that we need, overlaid with the smarts of my beautiful team of designers and creatives and makers and thinkers and strategists and planners, and it's that combination, it's that fusion. So I want to make sure it's really clear that by putting young people in the mix, it's about an equal partnership. It's about everyone sharing your skills and sharing your value. And then I was also reminded just about we can often default to thinking that we just need to build a technology solution, that I just need to build the technology and that's going to help me connect with young people. And when we started creating the Hive, we thought the same. We thought if we get the Instagram absolutely humming, young people are going to flock and they're going to tell us all about all the things that they want and need and do. But we just paused for a moment and tested that assumption by bringing some young people into the room for one singular engagement. That was where it started. We didn't know that we were going to be designing 6-7 years of beautiful, rich youth voice programs. We started with one conversation. And Elliot here was part of that very first conversation in 2019, along with 15 other young people who came from around the country. And the conversation that we had over those 2 days led us to unlocking so many other potential solutions and ideas that we never, ever would have landed on if we only stayed in a technology platform. So it's all about relationships. It is all about time. And I know that we are all time poor. I know that youth voice doesn't always seem like the thing that's going to generate big income. So how do we use that time really well? How do we use that time relationally? How do we build those relationships? How do we bring as much of ourselves and our worlds into the room as what we're asking of our young people? So that's the bit about connection. I'm going to throw to you, Elliot, given that you've kind of worked alongside for the longest, and then maybe do you want to jump into the social media question as well?
Sure. Yeah, kia ora. I mean, I think the biggest thing that's struck me when I've moved from being the young person in the program to being the less young person running the program is that invariably, with like no matter what you do, you will have some sort of idea of what you think people will come up with, and then you get them in the room, and then something completely different will happen, and that is the real magic of it. And I think that is the beauty of what the Hive was of our youth engagement platform. I think that the way that we could enable young people to be free with those ideas, and we created the space where people were happy to break the mold and to think outside the box, and were resourced in such a way that we could do that without having to take on the burden ourselves. It was definitely a big surprise to the people in the Hive who'd done sort of youth engagement things in the past, that we got there and we were like, maybe we could do this. And then a week later, there was a prototype of it put in front of us, that the hard mahi was not done by us, because we weren't resourced to. You know, we were busy doing our university assignments and playing sport and making friends and all of this sort of stuff. And so that because there is this vested interest, the people who have the resource and the time to make it happen are the ones who are actually making it happen. And that was so empowering. And I think that once we felt that, and we felt the loop being closed, is when that relationship really deepened, and it meant that we could go beyond and just keep building and keep the momentum going. Yeah, I think in terms of social media, it's such an interesting conversation at the moment, and having sat in some of the conversations at various different levels, what is so clear is that the way that different generations use social media is so different, and any blanket approach will not necessarily work for everyone. I wonder, Lola, if you want to share some of your thoughts on that as well.
For me.
So the question that we're moving on to now is there's a proposed ban for social media for anybody who's under the age of 16. And the context for us responding, obviously, there's young people who are using social media all the time, but beyond that, we were also asked to write a submission on behalf of young people in response to the proposed ban, and Lola was part of the group that drafted a really beautiful and considered response, which is available publicly online, and we'll go into way more detail than what we can go into now. But can you kind of summarize the top points that you and the group talked about?
I think what works for Australia won't necessarily work for Aotearoa. Australia doesn't even know that it works yet as well. It's not implemented yet. So I think when it comes to young people in social media, there's a lot of stereotypes and misrepresentation around it, and often we see that in the media as well, is that young people are addicted to their phones and lazy and just constantly online. But why are they online? What systems have forced them to be online? How are we encouraging them in their school situations to be online constantly? Are they using online platforms to create change, like positive change, and build community and networks? I personally think it really comes down to how the platform is being used rather than the platform itself. So if we are providing education and support and guidance for young people using these platforms, then they will in turn create awesome experiences for themselves and their peers online.
Sorry. 6 days early and still somehow late, sorry. But just to add on, like from personal experience, is the community building that social media can offer for young people with identities that often don't have the ability to have in-person connections. Just sharing from like my personal experience at the age of 14, 15, 16, having questions about my sexuality and who I was. Those weren't questions with answers available in the environment I had around me. And the level of connection that social media provided, especially in lockdown, I felt really important and something that in this ban should be taken into consideration. Sorry, this being vulnerable here is a bit difficult, but that's something that as well for of course rainbow communities, other communities as well have that point of contact, as Lola was saying, through through like social media. So I think that's definitely an important thing to take into consideration.
Can I add on to that? I think it's important not to understate as well the harm that social media can do to young people and the internet can do to young people. But that's not to say that those two truths, that social media is good and social media can be bad, can't exist at once. Both those things can be true. And I think that a blanket ban ignores that nuance.
I think that might be our time now. Thank you so much. And as we said, all of this is gentle provocation. We know that so many of you will be doing this in your mahi already. You're already connected with young people. You're serving young people. You're encouraging young people to get moving, and that in and of itself is a huge inspiration. So hopefully you got one or two little gems that can just help strengthen that even further. Ngā mihi.
Thank you so much. Seriously, your insights have been invaluable for us in this room. We so appreciate you coming back to do a session after your session. So please, once again, can you put your hands together for Eddie, Elliot, Lola, Ethan, Mairangi and Sean. Thank you. And Eddie, thank you for doing a beautiful job of facilitating that little quick session.